Hi everyone, SRT Mikado number 953 is here, and today we're going to be discussing about the Stories of Sodor Season 5, made by Victor Tanzik. Might be one of the most depressing season in the Stories of Sodor, with every single engine that we all know and love from the beginning had all begun to fade away. And as you all know, the latest episode of the Stories of Sodor Season 5 is the most depressing episode that we've all ever seen. If any of you hadn't watched that yet, please go and watch it. I don't want to spoil it. But if there is any of you that already watched all of the episode, then come and sit with me. I'm going to explain everything that we know on this series by far. The fifth season of Stories of Sodor only took place in 1965. And like I said from the beginning, it was the most tragic season in the Stories of Sodor series. Season 5 had 10 episodes, with 8 already had published on YouTube. However, there are only 4 episodes that are connected. The first one is about vandalism, where the vandals had begun to vandalize the entire railway, because the couples decided to went on strike, and because of this, it caused many problems. And in this episode, we got to introduce with a new character named Mr.hall, who was the new superintendent of the Sodor Railway. And while all of this is happening, the vandalism began to go even more extreme, so extreme that it killed Jeffrey, who volunteered to pull the flying kipper for Henry because the turntable in the roundhouse got jammed, and he's the only engine who was available. In the next episode, episode 4 called Rescue, we get introduced to Barry, the rescued engine, who was in coma for 7 years and wake up at the Sodor scrapyard. Because of the miscommunication amongst the crew in his old railroad, he was meant to be on overhaul while the other one, who looks exactly like him, was going for scrapping. However, while he was taken to the works, Henry just got a tragic accident that almost made him lose his life. Fortunately, Mr.hall able to save Henry by using the scrap engine from the scrapyards. Mr.hall also conducting an experiment on the steam locomotive too. He was considered that he should put on a test on Barry. Barry refused it, but when after he saw he saved Henry, he decided to comply. The 7th episode, called Experiment, is where we saw the result of the experimentation on Barry. Turns out, he was converted into a diesel engine. And the result was astounding success, and BR adopted the experiment, converting all the non-faceless steam engine from steam locomotive to diesel locomotive. While there's not much sad parts happens, but it did show us of how Mr.hall is. However, his other side is more sinister. And that is what we're going to talk about on the episode 8 called Revenge. This episode is one of the most tragic and depressing episodes that we've seen. But like I said, there's still more 2 episodes that needs to be published on YouTube on the next Saturday, which is Munitions Disaster and Fallout. On the 8th episode, we got to see Mr.hall backstories. And we also relearned about his father's name. His name is Michael Creedy, and I'm going to talk about this in the last part of this video. The next one is about Peter, who got shot by the German bloke who was the victim of the hospital where Peter blew up. Usually, the steam locomotive would not die easily by only just 3 shots, but as it turns out, he had metal fatigue. In the start of the video, Peter is shown to have losing steam, so Topham thought it was a workload, but after Peter died, the true reason is the metal fatigue. And the guy who got shot had shot in the right place. After that whole ordeal, Mr. Zorro came in to see Peter. However, Mr. Zorro did not prepare of what's coming to him. Before Topham had even introduced Mr.hall to Mr. Zorro, he already knew his name. Mr. Zorro was really confused, but Mr.hall said that he met him when he was a kid. He then talked to Mr. Zorro secretly at the back of the scrap engines. What he said, we don't know what it means. But in the next scene, it might have made it more sense. After Mr. Zorro returned to his home, Mr. Hall was waiting for him, just across the street. The scenes then cut to flashback, where Mr. Hall's mother having a problem with Mr. Zorro. As it turns out, Mr. Zorro don't have enough financial to compensate his family, and it will took over a month to receive the compensation. And as time went by, more bills came to Mr. Hall's mother, and without compensation backing from Mr. Zorro, the house was taken. Mr. Hall's mother couldn't take by the situation, decided to commit a suicide at the exact same time that Mr. Hall is returning home. And after that, the scenes cut back to the current, where Mr. Hall pulled out the same gun that his mother committed suicide and killed Mr. Zorro. 3 shots. Donald was nearby to hear a gunshot, but not seen Mr.hall, and Mr. Zorro was later reportedly dead. The 4 remaining biddies felt very sad that their former directors had been killed, with Douglas saying that bad luck comes in 3 and hoping that no more were gonna happen. That, however, we'll have to wait and see. And that's all we know so far in Season 5. And now I'm going to piece up all of the puzzles and made it into a full pictures. All of this started all because of one man, Mr. Robert Hall. A man that looks innocent but also suspiciously sinister. He already became a very interesting character in the start of the episode. His first appearance is when Donald was taken to the works when he got derailed by some vandals. And he said to Donald that his father used to work for his railway. And he also already knew Donald since he was a kid. This made Donald ponder that who is exactly this man is. And more information came out in the episode called Rescue when Donald was discussing with Edwards about Henry, and he brings up this topic. Edward explained that there is a man named Gregory Hall who works for the LNER, who got sacked by Mr. Starr who caused a trouble at Ellsridge. He then became an alcoholic and his wife had disappeared of a mysterious circumstances. And to keep him from his depression, the judge decided that he allowed to adopt his 2 nephews. And in the episode called Revenge, you already knew from the beginning of this video. But with all that being said, here is everything for what I could gather from Season 5. From the death of Jeffries and the incident with Henry and the murder of Mr. Zorro by Mr. Hall and the next attempt that he was going to do was all orchestrated by him. He was the cause of all of the havoc that had been wreaking on Sodor as a revenge of what this railway had done to his family. Here's the timeline of how it all happened. On the 2nd season of Stories of Sodor called Sabotage, Henry had crashed into Donald's back of a train where Mr. Hall's father, Michael Creedy, was in, and he was killed. With Mr. Creedy gone, Mr. Hall's family was in danger, and Mr. Zorro tried everything to help his family, but he couldn't. And after Mr. Hall's mother lost her house, she committed suicide. And with Mr. Hall and his twin have no family, he had to relocate his house to his uncle, and that is Gregory Hall. His real name is Robert Creedy, before he was adopted by his uncle, becoming Robert Hall. And with all the bad things he saw, this made him to make a revenge plan. With the first one he targeted is Henry. He knew that Henry was going to come by with a flying kipper in the morning, so he dropped a large pipe at the bottom of the Gordon's Hill to make Henry crash and die. However, that backfired and it was Jeffrey instead of Henry. But in the episode of Rescue, he got that opportunity. But to save face, he saved Henry, so no one knew that it was him. He said that Henry is safe, but he had to stay at the works for a very long time. My suspicion is that he tried to keep Henry in the works just so he have an opportunity to kill him completely. And in the episode of Experiment, that's actually what he wanted to do. He wanted to save all of the steam engine while killing some in the process. And in the episode called Revenge, he finally killed Mr. Zorro. And now, we are waiting of him wreaking the biggest havoc on Sodor. So there you go. The man that behind the curtain of all the death on Sodor is the man that we all thought that he's actually innocent. But in reality, that's not what we always thought. But now, let's talk about the next death on Sodor. We already knew who died in the Stories of Sodor Season 5. The first one is Jeffrey, followed by Peter, and now Mr. Zorro. And for my theory of the next death, it could be Sheffield or Peckett. Why? Well, according to Zanzu CH, he said that in the trailer of the Season 5, any character that did not appear is actually going to die. And he thought that Sheffield could be next, because in the trailer, there is a scrap engine of the J94. And I think that is possible, because in every single intro of Season 4 and Season 5, we can't see Sheffield anywhere. And Sheffield is also working with the Little Western. However, again, in every single intro, Sheffield was nowhere to be seen. And in the scene of the Little Western, it replaced with the Diesel instead. You might be thinking that is not possible, but I watch every single Stories of Sodor's, watch and rewatch multiple times, and even try to look into the scene of what Zanzu CH just said, and by God, he's right. And also, in the Munitions episode that was going to come out, he also made a connection with the Tux series. In the Tux episode that also called Munitions, there is also a character that had died there. And that character is a crane called Big Mickey. and he said that there's only one character in Stories of Sodor that named Mickey, and he said that he guaranteed that Mickey is the next character that's going to die next. But I find that is not possible because Mickey is not only a fire and rescue engine, but he's also a therapist. He is the most important character in Stories of Sodor because he was the last step of every single character development through Sheffield, Peter, Gordon, you name it. So there is no way that he is going to die. And by the time that I said all of this, I just realized that Victor were going to make every single non-Thomas characters that did not appear or mention in any of the Railway series book, TV series, or even a CGI series. And there is a lot of them. Now, I don't know about Reginald because in the Railway series book, Reginald was appeared to be a big city engine. However, that big city engine was lent to his brother, Randall. So I figured that Reginald was not going to die yet. Neil did mention in the Railway series book, but Clive and Matthew did not. But again, they're not going to die anytime soon. So there you have it. Through the mysterious man that caused all the havoc on Sodor and the death of the next engine that was going to come in the next episode. And if Victor saw these videos, if he said that I'm half right, well, we have to wait and see what Victor is going to show us. But if he did saw this video and did not comment, or he comment that I'm right, that meant my theory is correct. Mickey will not die. Sheffield or Peckett could die. And that is all of the answers that I could provide for all of you. You're welcome, and I'll see you next time.